Lagos Talk special. Let's confirm that. Okay, so we have about 50 seconds before we go on air.
The best radio program.
Studio. Well, Lagos here, where it is gone past 10 minutes past 8 o'clock, and we got a Lagos Talk special for you. I'm actually very I'm very happy about the fact that we're going to be discussing this subject in depth. And in order to join the conversation right here on Smooth Breakfast Lagos Talks, all you need to do is send WhatsApp messages into 0809 444 Call us up on 01 44 89 981. We're streaming live right now on youtube.com/smooth981fm. And of course, you can use the hashtag Lagos Talks 981. Do not forget that 981 up on Twitter.
That's right. This morning we're having a very important conversation. Our topic this morning is addressing mental disorders and rising cases of suicide. And we have a very special guest with us in the studio this morning. We have Dr. Tolu Ajomale. He's a public health programs coordinator, mental health desk at the Lagos State Ministry of Health. Of course, he's got a medical degree, MBCHB medicine, and also an MSc in international health management from the Imperial College in London. And also he's received training from Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine and the Harvard School of Public Health, with insights into healthcare practices, policies, and also programs in developing countries. Dr. Tolu Ajobale designs and implements public health strategies and interventions targeted at addressing current gaps and challenges in effective and efficient service delivery. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
Good to have you here.
Same here. Thank you very much.
All right,
Wow, Dr. Jamale, that is a lot of that's a lot of degrees and a lot of work that you have put into kind of honing your skills and making sure that this conversation is going to be a robust one.
I guess usually find that to be very the door opener, more or less. So when people hear that, oh, you studied here, you have this degree, they tend to want to listen to you more.
I
helps,
love
actually.
it.
The degrees do help.
Yes. All right. Now, this is a conversation that I feel that we should be having a lot more of all around the
Yes.
country. When it comes to addressing mental disorders and talking about the rising cases of suicide that we're seeing, the first thing that I think we need to do is kind of define the topic, right? So, what I would like to ask you, just straight up from the layman's point of view, explain to the layman what exactly are mental disorders. What would you say they are, and what kind of disorders have you found to be the most common amongst the residents of Lagos State, which is known to be a very, very stressful state?
Yes,
What would you say?
yes. Okay, so usually when we have these conversations around mental health, it creates a lot of stigma because once you mention mental health, everybody's thinking about someone walking down the street who isn't dressed properly or is talking to himself, but that is one part of it. So the whole conversations around mental health, we usually would say that the best way to describe is that everyone lives on a spectrum, right, of either having very good mental health or very poor mental health.
Okay.
And so we all move along that spectrum. So depending on the things that happen around us, so maybe you lose a loved one, you tend to swing towards having poor mental health because you're going to either slip into depression, for example, or you lose a job and then you're dealing with things like anxiety, or you live in Lagos and you're dealing with things like stress.
Oh boy.
So when we talk about mental health generally, everyone has mental health. It's part of the components of health. So when we even define health in itself, we're talking not just about physical health. We're also talking about mental health, and we're also talking about social well-being as well. And so it's not just the absence of disease, but the complete state of well-being in those three key areas. So for mental health, we're looking at your thoughts, your emotions, how you're able to manage them, how you're able to live your normal day-to-day life, how you're able to, achieve your life's purpose, how you're able to contribute to your community. So those are the things that contribute to the whole concept of mental health. So that we change that narrative away from, when you say mental health, you only talk about schizophrenia or psychosis or, very heavy stuff like that. But everyone is dealing with it. And I think the more we have these conversations, we can focus on how we can improve people's mental well-being.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Doctor. Well, I like the fact that you mentioned improving everyone's mental well-being. But generally, there's a project that's been worked on. It's called Art for Life. Could you walk us through that? What does that mean?
Right. So Art for Life was created in 2019 as a project to introduce art into healthcare. So more often than not, when people go to the hospitals, you're focusing on the doctors who are giving you medication or nurses who are trying to help you recover. But we know that the mind is a very important part of that process. And so we understand that using art can actually help improve health outcomes for people. And we had a fantastic opportunity during the lockdown, just after the project started, where we're able to, utilize art tools, for example, music, other forms of art therapy, to be able to improve the health outcomes, the well-being of patients who were in the hospitals and in the isolation centers, as well as the frontline workers who were, facing a significant amount of burnout and stress from working 24 hours, 7 days. Very stressful conditions.
I do remember around that time when the videos first came out. It was a shock, but a good shock to the system when I saw this focus being put on. Well, you know what? There are other forms of health. Of which is the physical side of things. And so we saw patients being out in the open air, being able to enjoy this music, and we also talked about art as well. And when you talk about the art component of being in a hospital situation, it does remind me of this over in the UK, in the NHS, you see paintings all around the hospitals, and it's great to see that we're imbibing that in Nigeria, and we're starting to put the highlights and the focus on that.
It's a good thing you mentioned that, because in the isolation centers, one of the things we also focused on was creating art on the walls, creating murals as well, so that people have something to always look at when the musicians are not around, when the artists are not around, the comedians are not around, and they have something that can always, create a sense of hope for them. And so we're also including art in a lot of our hospital infrastructures now across the state.
So what else is Art for Life doing or looking to do in the future? Because you were telling us some things that you have done since the start, since what you did during the pandemic.
Right. So we have done quite a number of projects. We did a sort of like an advocacy meeting and creating awareness around stammering, which we did in collaboration with Alliance Française. And then we also had a conference that we did professors who had been doing a lot of work in art in Germany, and also collaborating with people in Lagos who have also been doing some work to create opportunities and see how we can still create greater avenues for using art as a form of therapy for the people here. So the next step that we're looking at is creating that policy environment that will allow that to be a mainstream thing, not just in public hospitals, but also in private hospitals as well, and that people can see that there's a lot of benefits in using art to help improve patient outcomes.
Awesome. If you're out there and you want to be a part of our talk, the phone lines are open, so you can reach out to us on 014489981. We're also streaming live on YouTube, so please reach out to us on youtube.com/smooth981FM Lagos.
And of course, you can use the hashtag Lagos Talks 981 on Twitter and tag us in at Smooth981FM. Now, I've got some statistics to bring your way, people. So in 2019, the Deputy Director of the Suicide Research Prevention Initiative, Dr. Titilayo Tade, 2020 put the number of deaths by suicide at 7,019, according to the World Health Organization. We had 5,110 males, 1,909 females, covering over a 5-year study period at Luth. Now, do you have the numbers, or updated numbers on what we can look at as maybe saying this is the current suicide and attempted suicide rate in Lagos?
Right. So, like that study you discussed and brought forward, one of the key issues is that suicide is underreported. One, people who have family members who they've lost to suicide do not tell others that the person died by suicide.
There's a stigma to it.
Yes,
still.
because they're trying to avoid that stigma associated with that, because why did the person kill themselves? And then there's the religious component that comes with it as well. So people try to bury that information as much as they can. So a lot of the information that we have is only from those either we discovered or ones that were reported. And what we have at the moment is 7.2% suicidal ideation for Lagos people. Nigeria as a whole is about 6.9%, 6.9%. And I think the World Mental Health Survey that was done a few years ago put it at 6.2%. But the numbers are rising. And it's a strong indication that
even with the underreporting. And I think it's because, in the last couple of years, the conversations around mental health have become a bit more mainstream. People are not ashamed to talk about their mental health.
Okay.
I remember a very famous journalist, a celebrity, Oprah Winfrey, had an interview some time ago, and she said, we need to get to that point where mental health conversations become normalized. We can talk about it. I'm really not in a good place right now. And social media created that opportunity. People started saying, you need to protect your mental health, self-care, self-love. I mean, to some extent, it had certain aberrations to it, but largely people started becoming more comfortable talking about mental health.
Okay.
And so with that, we had a lot more people who were able to come out and say, I lost a loved one, or I lost my son, who before now everyone would have assumed was the happiest go-lucky fellow. And then he, I'm sure you're, yes, exactly, on social media where people are posting things and still end up carrying out the act. And so the reason why suicide is still a huge thing now and is growing is because people haven't found an outlet to be able to let out the background reason why they're dealing with or contemplating suicide. But at the same time, social media has also created an outlet for them to be able to leave that final message before they go. And so we have more data that's coming in, and people are more comfortable coming out to talk about it so they can help other people as well.
All right. Well, we see a break coming, and we're going to get to that break. But I want to, take a deeper dive into this talk about suicide. I know that there's statistics that show that there are more males than females that commit suicide, amongst other things. And it will be interesting to understand the reasons why. But first, I think we should head on to that break.
So we're going to take a break right now, but don't you worry. When we get back, still more on this topic. There is so much more that we can uncover. If you want to join the conversation, 0144899981. Call us up on that number. Send WhatsApp messages in 0809 440 Stick with us. Like when I first heard... when we think about
like this.
What does future foreign banking mean to you? Speed, innovation,
how did
so here's just the mic actually.
Okay, yes. You never tell me when I'm not showing. I'll check the video and I'll just be like, Shopper's face is hidden by this thing. Wow, thank you.
Yeah, obviously, can't miss you. See, I'm like this. So
you turn and they're like, where did he go? Where did he go?
He's kind of also trying to say something, but
Ah!
I went under the radar.
I was like, so my face is bigger than my phone. But I was just like, no, I'm not going to go there. Don't worry, I caught it. But I choose to take the high road, people. I choose to take the high road.
Very proud of you.
Oh, did I get that? I didn't get that.
okay, we're coming back in now. Vicky's second one.
My name is Zainab.
Zainab!
Love music, love life station.
Providence Bank.
Okay.
Future foreign banking.
Smith 98.1. It is 25 minutes gone past 8 o'clock. Let's keep talking. For our Lagos Talk special, we are discussing addressing mental disorders and rising cases of suicide in Nigeria. And our guest for today is at the mental health desk at the Lagos State Ministry of Health. And you can trust in him. He's got his medical degree, his MBCHB. He's got his MSc in International Health Management. He also has training from the Liverpool of Tropical Medicine and the Harvard School of Public Health. Now, we discussed a little bit about, you know, mental health disorders. What are mental health disorders? The role of art when it comes to taking care of our mental health. The unfortunate rising cases of suicide. And now we had to put a pause in the conversation, but guess what? Press play now.
Yes, so we wanted to talk about the role of males and females generally.
Right.
When I say roles, what I mean is the WHO puts the statistics at 5,110 in males and 1,909 in females. Now, I mean, it begs the question, why is there such a huge... I mean, I know that...
What's the disparity?
Yes,
Yeah.
there's no better way to put it, but then what's the disparity?
Almost like, since we're talking about gender equality, why isn't that applicable here as well?
No.
I'm guessing it's more along the lines of, is it due to societal pressures? Is it due to because especially in Nigeria, we tend to have this issue of the focus being on the girl child, and people
Yes.
have raised this awareness of what happens to the boy child who's just left
Yes.
on his own.
Yes.
So does that play into it, or what are the other factors?
So I like it that you put it that way. So we can look at it in two ways, right?
Okay.
One, a lot of things that contribute to poor mental health are largely environmental, contribute meaningfully to their society, to their family, to wherever they're working at. And women are in that place where they're getting more visibility and they're becoming more productive, becoming more engaged. And unfortunately, with the conversations around the girl child, the boy child, the role of men seems to have been lost. Because before now, you have this conversation around what was the role of the man, and he says, oh, he's supposed to protect his family, he's supposed to provide for the family, he's the breadwinner. And then the environment changed. Women are now breadwinners, right? They are more productive. And then the man is beginning to consider what is his role now. And then conversations with the girl child, empowering her and seemingly neglecting the boy child, creates that dilemma as well in terms of self-awareness, in terms of identification, of purpose, of self, and what you're supposed to do. And once you lose that sense of purpose, once you lose that sense of self, you begin to wonder what you're doing here. And one of the conversations that happen with people who want to end their lives with suicide is that sense of hopelessness, that I'm not doing anything, I can't get anything done, so what's the point of being
I'm
here?
a waste of the earth's resources.
Exactly. So that puts a lot of pressure on men. And some of the data also suggests that men seem to have access to a lot of the things that you use to commit suicide. For example, access to weapons, for example, guns. Men have more weapons than females do.
Right. Okay.
And so they tend to want to use that more than females do. And then the process by which the suicide also happens is also a bit more traumatic with men than with women, because they seem to want to use what is available to them. There are a lot of different studies that are going around globally around the different ways people end their lives by suicide, but more of that seems to push traumatic means of ending their lives to men, which is why that seems to be a larger part of that conversation. Plus, I think women also have a better social support system, where they can find help and support and mentors who they can have conversations with. Because one of the things that will contribute to suicide is when you're not able to find someone to talk to. So in 2015, there was a conversation around depression, and the World Health Day at the time was Depression, Let's Talk, because it was seen that one of the best ways to begin to look at providing interventions is creating opportunities for conversations to happen. So when you're able to talk to someone, you're able to have someone who you can confide in, it helps navigate the thought process that are happening in the person's mind at the time and realign them with a sense of purpose, the sense of hope. But if you don't have anyone to talk to, men usually wouldn't have those conversations with men, right? The only conversations are sports or politics or something.
And that's one of the things when people talk about equality and they were saying, oh, women are fighting for the equality, but inequality adversely affects both parties.
Yes.
Doesn't it? So whilst, yes, about women having access to people to talk with, professionals and otherwise. There's also a focus on women, on girls, as we grow into women, learning more social skills.
Yes.
Whilst men are just, you've
Not
already spoken
exactly.
about it, focus on the economic side of the
Yes.
issue. We have this message in from Ozzy up on WhatsApp. Ozzy says, "I think women are more spiritually inclined than men. They talk about things whilst men don't. They bottle stuff in. So pressure is another factor, and the fact that our boys are raised not to show emotion because it's not,
Yes.
and she puts in quotes, manly,
Yes.
is a major issue. My 19-year-old cousin shot himself here in Lagos a few years back, and it is tragic," says Ozzy. Ozzy, we're so sorry about that, and we hope that the bereaved, we hope that his family, you have managed to find some measure of peace. But yes, because this is something that doesn't just affect one person, it affects
The whole
people
family.
around them.
Yes.
I feel like a lot of men don't talk about things, and I'm glad that you highlighted that difference. But also, going into part of the research, it says 90% of those with attempt suicide have mental problems. So I think the bigger question now would be, what are the causes of mental disorder?
Right. So mental disorders are looked at in multiple ways. So some people are born with hereditary traits that would predispose them to having certain mental disorders. So we have found cases where a grandmother had schizophrenia, for example, and the child also had schizophrenia, and the child after that also had schizophrenia. So there's the hereditary part of mental disorders, but there's also the environmental aspect as well. So
when you say environmental, sorry to cut you short real quick, road rage, for example, Lagos roads, could that also be a part of it?
So now road rage is a symptom of a bigger problem, right? So, for example, you live in Lagos, you live maybe somewhere in Festac, for example, and you have to wake up at 4 a.m. to get to work on time. You deal with traffic. You get to work, you're not supposed to put up a nice
You deal
smile,
with noise pollution as well.
which is another huge problem. And studies have shown that noise pollution have also contributed to worsening mental health. So you have to put up a smile at work. You have to deal with customers who are also angry because they probably dealt with other things before coming there. And then your boss is also putting a lot of pressure on you as well. You also now have to get back in traffic to go back home. You end up spending, if you use one of the navigation systems, for example, they usually send you analytics at the end of the month of how many hours you spent in traffic. At the end of the year, if you check, you probably would find that in Lagos, you probably spent about 30 days accumulatively in traffic, especially if you work on the island and you live very far away on the mainland.
So, I don't want to know about the people who live in Apapa. I'm sorry.
So you put all of that together, right? And then people now get back on the road or try to get back home. They're thinking about how they're going to feed their families. They're struggling with getting fuel, for example. They're struggling with paying rent, paying bills. And then someone tries to cut in front of you at that time. You're looking for an outlet to express all of the frustration that you have. And so the person you meet on the road is just the best person. Number one, he doesn't know you, you don't know him. So it's perfect because you can let out all your anger. Some people will come out of their cars with bats and smash people's windshield. It's not because they have a personal grudge against you, but it's an outlet for them to express that anger, which is a problem in itself, right? Because we've not found an opportunity to be able to manage a lot of our emotions and also build resilience. But it is not uncommon to find these kinds of situations in most urban environments like New York.
Okay.
They have worse cases. There was a video online at some point where someone was trying to overtake another person and he took out his gun and he started shooting at the person.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So we haven't gotten to that point yet, and I'm very glad. But
we hope that we don't.
we hope we don't get there.
Yes.
So there's a lot of pressure living in urban societies that predispose people to a lot of stressors that can lead to road rage, for example. But there are other, more important, I guess, issues that are probably not as common. People dealing with postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, and you would find that a lot of women are actually struggling with that, especially new mothers. You've had sometimes easy pregnancy, sometimes difficult pregnancy, and then a difficult delivery as well. And then a lot of women, if you have these conversations with them, they will tell you that they really didn't feel that affection for that child initially, but they can't tell anyone about that because they will look at you and say,
they'll be seen as bad mothers.
You're a terrible mother. How can you not love your baby? Right? And then after a while, they begin to build that bond. So we're trying to also create opportunities for people to have conversations around, what some of the struggles that you're dealing with, just after delivery or, postpartum, a period. And so we also have substance abuse as well, which is also increasing. And there are studies that show that by 2030 it's going to be a leading pandemic in Lagos because people are using substances to try and escape the reality that you're dealing with.
And can you talk a little bit about the role that these substances have on the brain chemistry and on
Right.
mental health?
So a lot of the substances that exist are either naturally occurring or chemical,
Okay.
or synthetic. And so what they do is they alter some of the brain chemistry and either increase certain hormones that make you feel good. So there are certain feel good hormones that are naturally produced in the brain. When you use some of these substances, they trigger them to over-secrete and sometimes create a confusion in the brain itself, almost like creating a surge of power that would go into a system, for example.
Okay.
And you overdo
short
that, it
circuits.
short circuits the whole brain. And then you now have those people hearing things, seeing things, acting erratically, either going to the extreme of becoming violent or become so secluded that they don't want to talk to anyone and they want to shut themselves up in their room. And then they begin to contemplate thoughts that they normally wouldn't have when they're engaged with their normal activities.
Okay.
Things with what substances do is it creates a room in your brain where you lock yourself in. It's pretty much like a lockdown, but in your mind. And so you begin to ponder on thoughts that you normally would have overlooked and begin to wonder, what's the point? And so some people pondering those thoughts can begin to consider things like suicide as an escape. Some people ponder those thoughts and begin to have hallucinations and say, oh, I can do certain things that would end up, ending their lives. And so all of these are triggers that come from us trying to either deal with peer pressure or deal with social pressures. And because people have access to them or new experiences from them, it begins to grow. But most times people don't think about the long term of these things. So, for example, I know cannabis seems to be very trendy now, and certain countries have legalized it, but studies have also shown that cannabis can lead to loss of memory
Okay.
in the long
Right.
term. And
Okay.
people don't contemplate that because you feel that, oh, it's not something you probably can get addicted to, and then you're only going to experience it in the interim. But in the long term, you begin to find that those people aren't able to remember things that they normally would previously. And so those are some of the struggles that people will begin to deal with time.
And also long periods of loss. Did I say loss of sleep? And also long periods of.
No, but
Lack
actually,
of
you
sleep,
you
rather.
you you come up
Yes.
with a real issue: lack of sleep.
Yes.
Could it be a cause for mental disorder?
Yes. So remember, we talked also about Lagos stressors, about getting home
Mhm.
really late. So you only have very few hours to sleep. Doctors would normally recommend about 6 hours of sleep, but people will laugh at you in Lagos. It's 6 hours of sleep in Lagos. How would you make that happen?
And yet we do know that sleep
It is
deprivation.
important, yes. Because
Yeah.
a lot of us who were in uni, especially when exam periods, we don't sleep as much, and then we know how we feel just right after we do the exams or whatever. We are not able to concentrate properly. So there are a lot of issues that are around poor sleep. There's poor concentration. There is poor normal interactions that you have. There's poor thought coordination, and then there's poor memory as well. So short-term memory, you're not able to remember things as quickly as you used to, and not able to do a lot of things that you normally would.
All right, we see your messages coming in on WhatsApp. We are going to take a very quick break. When we come back, the final few minutes of Lagos Talks right here on Smooth Breakfast.
Future forward banking.
Man, how quickly the time is
I
going.
know.
We haven't touched so like. Okay, we'll get back to the questions. So no, but it's just don't worry, don't feel the need to cut off anything. Just keep going. Last,
Just take a look at
we
the
beg you to
songs.
come back and then we'll do another episode. I will cover the
Do a
next
second
few.
special.
But I mean, yeah, I think, and radio is a great opportunity to have these conversations because people are on the road. Yes.
Yeah,
It's a good time to talk to them.
and somebody who's just about to take his bath from his car. He's like,
Yes.
what did he say?
Yes.
Is a symptom?
Let me put my gun back.
And we don't really take time to breathe. So there's this thing we're trying to also encourage people to do. It's called mindfulness. You just take a moment to just breathe. Take a
What did you call
minute.
it again? Mind.
Mindfulness.
Mindfulness.
Okay.
I love it. See, when I'm over there doing my meditation, you can tell the days I haven't done meditation. Kade knows. Smooth 98.1 Lagos. You are talking on Smooth Breakfast, and let's get straight into the conversation on WhatsApp as we take a look at this topic addressing mental disorders and rising cases of suicide. Joining us in the studio, Kaide Baker and myself, Shokma Martins, we have got Dr. Tolu Ajomale, who's a public health programs coordinator at the mental health desk over at Lagos State Ministry of Health. Now, going over to what you have to say, Ozzy has come back with a few more messages saying that traffic for me was a trigger. I lived in VGC and I spent 4 to 5 hours daily in traffic, and it affected my mental health. I felt burnt out all the time, and I'm so happy this conversation is happening. Thank you, Ozzy. Ozzy also said I had to move, and trust me, I'm better for it. I have a much better quality of life. Whilst Cisco Delgado says that he agrees with you, Dr. Ajomale, saying that the average Lagosian is dealing with severe mental health issues. He says, based on women, whenever my wife is pregnant, I'm always careful with her because she tends to act out, and I understand why she is that way. Thank you for that message, Cisco Delgado. We've got this one in from Yemisi, from Pasadakwa rather, who says that one major thing that's very important for us to note when counseling people with mental health disorders is to let them know that some of the targets we set for ourselves are pretty unrealistic, and we can afford to let them go and just focus on the journey, not the goal.
And I that's a very valid point, because I think social media in itself, I think, has put a lot of pressure on people, particularly younger people. I'm talking teenagers going into young adults, and it's causing a different type of reaction entirely. I mean,
it's a mindset issue, and so when you were discussing, because let's not demonize social media here, a lot of people have found help on social media. A lot of people have been exposed to new things on good things for them on social media, but then there is the other side of things.
I mean, we're human beings. Every product can be used for good or otherwise. Depends on how creative you get with it. And as human beings, we tend to be very creative with everything that we tend to use. And it's interesting because you would find that in certain instances, when certain people are putting things out there on social media, it is not necessarily to put pressure on others, but it's an expression of their own joy, their own reality. But then you now find that other people are recreating a false sense of that reality. So it pretty much like how, a lot of our older people, when they were much younger, would watch TV and see a man wearing a red cape and can fly. And it looked so real. So social media has recreated that and created a sort of reality type facade that is just acting, basically.
And now when we see people recreating that, there's this dissonance between your social media life and your actual life. Yes. And
that also puts pressure on those people who are doing those things to try and match up with their social media lives, because they're afraid that when people see them in real life and can't put that together, they feel a sense of shame, embarrassment. It also speaks to their self-esteem as well, right? Because you're creating a persona that doesn't exist, and then you're living a very different life. You're trying to show that you're driving a Maserati, for example.
Dr. Jamal, not even Maserati. Let's just.
I'm even putting the extreme.
So, have you seen Reels and the filter?
Yes.
The filters?
Yes.
Where you just see Foxy or something, and then suddenly your face looks so
really
different.
nice.
And it's in a video, and you're like, wow, I could look like this. Then you take the filter off and you say, oh, I look like this. Oh,
I mean, and that has caused a lot of issues for people. I know people who have had to see psychologists because of that. They began to, a lot of body shaming and a lack of self-esteem, lack of self-love. And then you find that those people are having trouble relationships as well, because they probably meet people online with that filter of who they are, and then when they meet those people in real life, it's a very different thing. So it's like, oh, this is not the market that I was looking for.
I'm glad you mentioned this, because it's a good segue into the symptoms. Yes. Okay, so I'd like us to talk about the symptoms of mental disorder. So what are the things to look out for?
So it's oh my god, you guys,
it's so
wide.
It's so broad.
But I think maybe we'll just take the very basic ones, and I'll take it from two perspectives. The perspective of a parent trying to observe certain changes in the child, right? And then the perspective of a peer observing other things in their peer.
Okay.
So for peer to peer, for example, maybe colleagues or age mates or couples, right? You begin to notice that the person you're with has started becoming either very violent, or like how they used to be really calm and sweet and patient before, or they become very withdrawn, right? They don't want to go out anymore. They don't want to interact with anyone anymore. They don't even take their baths anymore. So they can sit in their rooms. The whole house is untidy and it's messy, and they're comfortable with it.
What
and they don't
about
want to get out
extreme
of that.
sleepiness? Is that one?
Yes.
Okay.
So they don't want to get out of bed as well. So the specialists will describe it as a low energy, right? So they don't have the drive to be able to carry on normal activities like taking a bath, getting out of bed, cleaning up your room, much less going out to work or going out anywhere else. And we have a lot of people who are struggling with these things, who are also, people who have works. And so they will call in to their employers and say, oh, I'm not feeling well today. Not necessarily because they have a physical illness, but they're struggling, right? And there are a lot of people who are struggling. And so you also have those who become super elated beyond normal, right? You also have people who have this extreme sense of sadness. They are always moody. They're always crying. Their eyes are always red. They don't want to engage with anyone anymore. Those are very common red flags that you can see and say, oh, something is going on with this person. And the funny thing is, there is a very huge concept in mental health. It's called insight, in which a person understands that they have a problem and they're willing to seek help for it. A lot of people who are struggling with their mental health don't even recognize it themselves that they have those struggles.
Now, this leads me to a question, because we saw the House of Representatives passing a second reading for a bill to remove imprisonment as punishment for attempted suicide. Now, do you agree that individuals who attempt suicide should be put in compulsory counseling and a community service of not less than 6 months? Does that help or does that hinder?
So our conversation across board with NGOs, with specialists, with everyone who's been working in this space has been to decriminalize attempted suicide, because these are people who are looking for help. I think originally when putting people in jail for attempting suicide was supposed to serve as a deterrent, thinking that, oh, you try to kill yourself, you go to jail,
So
as
you
well
wouldn't
as
want to do it.
so you wouldn't want to do it. But it became counterproductive at the end,
yes.
because it wasn't addressing the root cause, right? But then the switch now to compulsory community service doesn't also still reach the goal we're trying to get to, because you've still criminalized it, just that you've changed it from jail term.
You've changed the
to community
language,
service.
yes.
So-
Because now what it is will the chicken eat the corn if you throw it at it, or
Exactly.
if you feed it gently?
Exactly. So, and these are people who are looking for help, right? And like you read out earlier on, about 90% of people who have attempted suicide are people who are struggling with their mental health. They need access to help, right? And so getting access to help becomes a priority. And I think what we need to do nationally is develop a suicide prevention strategy that would help people who are attempting suicide to get access to those who can provide interventions for them. But that would involve a lot of people, including the police, who are the ones arresting people, other enforcement agencies,
Amongst others.
amongst others.
Real quick, because we're almost out of time. In fact, we're totally out of time. But we'd like to know this: how is the government working on reducing the rates of suicide in Lagos?
Right. So we have a number of strategies, and probably will take up the whole day talking about some of them. But one of the key ones that I think will be important to mention is having access to someone to talk to, which I mentioned before. So in 2019, we launched the Lagos Lifeline, which is a mental health helpline for Lagosians, for them to have someone you can talk to anonymously, without feeling a sense of guilt, without feeling a sense of judgment. People at the back end
Say
are
that
trained
again.
counselors.
Lagos
Lifeline.
Lagos Lifeline.
Yes.
Okay. Is this the number? Is it in the public domain?
Yes, it's in public domain, but I guess get the opportunity to put it out there now.
Put it, go ahead, please. We'd love
So
it.
it's 090
090
9000
9000
6463.
6463. So 090 9000 6463. Please make sure you go over to @smooth981fm, because we have run out of time. We are going to put this number out there on our Twitter handle. And Dr. Ajamale, just to take up a little more time, where can people go to find out more? Let's say if they're feeling a kind of way to seek help apart from the Lagos Lifeline.
Right. So you can also reach out social media at Lagos Mind.
At
That is
Lagos
Lagos MIND Mind.
Okay.
We also have a website, lagosmind.org, where they can have access to where they can get help from in public hospitals as well as private facilities. So people have the option of choice of where they can get access to care. So send a DM, send a WhatsApp message to that number as well. Reach out. So we're trying to create as many opportunities. We're also working on a new project with some of our social media partners like Twitter and Facebook.
Okay.
To also create opportunities to red flag people and get access to care.
All right,
you so
Dr.
much.
Ajamale, thank you so much
Thank
for
you for the
joining
opportunity.
us. And we're going to have you back. This is a
Yeah,
conversation
that's
that should not end until we come to solutions. All right, so people, that is that coming up. It is going to be sports inside of the locker room at 9 o'clock.
We know you're listening.
All right.
We ran over time. We ran over time, but we